Okay, we'll get things going here. Hopefully, I see many of the same faces that were in the first session, so hopefully you enjoyed that session, gained some new knowledge, a little bit of insight into what CEA is all about from the producer perspective. What we want to do in the second session is look at CEA from the retail as well as the consumer perspective. So we've got a great panel here of a couple retailers, and then Fran from Driscoll is going to share some consumer information that she's got as it relates to CEA. Max, can you put up the slide? I want to keep this slide up here. We've developed this slide. This is part of the challenge that we think that is going on. Put yourself in that position of the consumer as they're walking through that produce department, and the barrage of different logos, messaging that they have to deal with. What does all of this mean? Is it confusing? Does it help tell the story? That's something we want to talk about in this session. Once again, I'm going to turn things over to Walter Robb to begin this. I think this will be a great session, again, to learn things from the retailer as well as the consumer perspective. So Walter, all yours.
Good morning, everyone. We are gathered here today to share a few words about the future of indoor agriculture. In the last session earlier, we heard predictions that that the organic indoor agriculture was going to be anywhere between 5 and 25% of the organic food supply over the next 5 years, right? So that's a very interesting range, but it's also showing you kind of the potential for indoor ag to contribute to the future organic produce supply. So, which is why I think Matt really wanted to put it on the agenda today. So, in this session, last session we talked to the folks who are actually growing it, and this session we want to talk to those folks who are marketing it and or selling it, and kind of get a sense of how that is playing through as we think about the future of organic produce. And but before I do that, moderator's option to, I just want to introduce you to my good young friend, Anthony Pavich. Please stand up, Anthony. Anthony and I worked together at Whole Foods for many, many years. He's produce royalty, and he has decided to leave Whole Foods about 6 months ago, and he's looking for a gig. So, and if you out there that want a smart guy that's got that CPA chops, you ought to talk to him, because I would hire him myself. He's really good. Okay, Anthony, thank you very much. All right, thank you for giving me that little indulgence. But okay, so back to the business at hand. Here we are talking about this pretty exciting development. I asked the last group, are they farmers or are they technologists? And I got kind of a halfway between. Do we have a problem? Okay.
It wasn't turned. Oh, okay. You got it.
Okay. All sorts of excitement here at the start of the session. Let's just start with each of you, an introduction. You can introduce yourself, but also kind of, what is your definition of CEA? How are you thinking about that from the perspective of your experience, your brand? You all know I'm a retailer for a lot of years, but let's start with you, Fran. What the heck is CEA from your perspective? And how are you thinking about it in terms of where we are right now with the organic produce supply?
So just quick introduction. My name is Fran Dillard. I head the brand and product marketing efforts at Driscoll's. So a little bit of background, I would say, for Driscoll's, so that we put the rest of the conversation in context, because I'm the only one actually up here representing the consumer's voice. So from a Driscoll's perspective, our mission is actually to delight the consumer through the alignment of the customer and the grower. And so for us, what we feel our secret sauce is flavor, and that is our number one mission. And that is done through our genetic pipeline and our commitment, I think, through R&D. So that's how our business model works. We have proprietary varieties. They go to independent growers. They bring it back. We do the sales and marketing. So Driscoll's has been around for 100 years. We consider ourselves early movers. We consider ourselves pioneers. We consider ourselves disruptors in understanding what the marketplace is and really growing a brand. So if you think about the evolution between flavor first and varieties, you think about the evolution of organics. While organics is a smaller portion of our business, We are a large player in the fresh berries. So for us, we are consumer demand, and if we see a trend or an up-and-coming way for us to really meet the needs of the consumers, we're going to move towards that way.
Oh, to be fair, Fran, you are I mean, I know the numbers, I'm not going to say them, but you're a meaningful player in the organic produce industry. In
Yes,
berries.
we
Okay.
are, and I think for us, we really are a consumer brand, and we listen to the macro trends. So the idea of my department is we look at what's happening now in the marketplace for the consumer, which really is the millennial mom, but our responsibility is also to understand what's happening in the future with Gen Z and Generation Alpha up and coming.
Okay, so what is CEA and what do they think about it?
So we have announced a partnership with Plenty in October. So we are committed to growing indoor strawberries. And so we feel for us the combination of what is going to provide us a competitive edge is our genetic pipeline, which is about flavor first, and then our partnership with Plenty is really about the technology. So the combination of the two really is going to be what our market opportunity. As we've started doing research and really starting to unfold what is in the mindset of the consumer is really validating what is the number one purchase driver. And so from a marketing perspective, when I look at the messaging and I look at some of the packaging that's happening in the marketplace, for me, the first and number one thing is for us to really remember that they're still buying based on flavor. While the Gen Z is up and coming and sustainability is really going to become complex of what drivers become equal or above to the flavor, it's really kind of texturing the hierarchy. The second one outside of price winds up being freshness. And we've discovered that freshness can be delivered in a couple of different ways, whether it's considered local or freshness really considered that it can be delivered in some other way. But it's the quality of the product, how long it lasts, whether it molds. So that's the downside of if it can take away from the flavor perspective.
Right.
What does CEA mean to the consumer? Nothing.
Okay, but we spent the last hour with different growers telling you their secret sauce on how they are growing indoors, and how they all had a different way of doing it, and they were very proud of it, and they're out of the continued. Does that matter to you? I mean, does it matter to you? You obviously picked one. With
I
Plenty, but
think from a messaging perspective, really, I consider the marketing, at least at Driscoll's, our job is somewhat easy because the product itself delivers on the flavor side. If that's how we've grown the brand, that's what the promise is. And so for us, our brand is if we deliver something above and beyond the flavor, is really being able to message it on top of the flavor. When we talk about the organic consumer for us, it was interesting. We were comparing categories last night. We all had dinner and really kind of understanding what's happening organically between other products. For ours, our shopper really buys both conventional and organic. We really don't have a true organic shopper. So dependent on what's happening in the marketplace at the time, they will make a decision based on what they actually see in the store. Does it look fresh? What's the price comparison? What's available? So our shoppers switch. There isn't a truly organic. They're willing to pay more for it in the price premium, and that's for us really in terms of growing our business where we're definitely heading. But then just putting your mindset back onto the consumer, keep thinking of mom in the grocery store. She's, at the cooler, and she's making a comparison. It's an impulse buy. And so for us, those are the dynamics that we're thinking about. What matters on the packaging, how we're going to communicate it, what we're saying on social media, and being really, really specific in the purchase drivers.
But so again, if I go to the shelf and you have berries that are grown indoors, you have berries that are grown outdoors, is the package going to say these are grown indoors and these are grown outdoors?
We are definitely looking at what the drivers are and how to consistently communicate them so that they really matter. And the research is indicating that flavor and the aspect of freshness.
So probably not.
We are still in the process of really unfolding it.
Are you running for office or something?
I'm going to stay true to the mission of our company, and I really do think that's how people build brands, is staying committed to the number one purchase driver.
Okay. All right. So let's come over to Vic. Can you introduce yourself? I mean, this is a fellow grocer here, which I appreciate very much. And what's your take on all this? What is CEA to you? What is CEA to your customers? What do you think about it?
Okay. I'm Vic Savinello. I'm the Vice President of Produce at Spartan Nash. An hour and a half ago, I would have said CEA was greenhouse grown. But after the previous seminar, I would say it's indoor grown. A little bit of a change in thinking after people talking about black box and, very interesting and very enlightening. And I guess that's why we come to these things, right? So, but I see a huge future in it. I think, I don't know whether it's very important to the consumer that it's grown indoor, but I think indoor gives a great story, depending on what the consumer's priorities are. Right, whether it's somebody that's looking for something that they know is safe, whether it's something that consumers looking for that might have a special flavor, and I think that varies by category and by segment. And if, as an example, we'll look at the snacking tomatoes. I mean, the snacking tomato segment of the tomato category, being grown indoor, has introduced flavors that are just beyond belief, and that's created such a growth in the sales of tomatoes and the different varieties, and it's just wonderful for our business, and it gives us so much more opportunity on the horizon. And things that are coming that are very exciting are the berries, right? I don't think to the consumer it's going to be as important that this particular variety or name of berry was grown indoor. I think it's going to be important that they taste like something you never tasted before, or that you remember back when, right? The fact that they're grown indoors is going to be a little bit of a benefit, and it might be the way that you identify it to the consumer, because they need to be able to identify it, and we'll leave that up to the marketers, right? But I think I guess the answer is it depends on the category and the segment, right?
That's good. So, well, let's just push on that, because if you don't know, folks, his bio, he used to also work at the Fresh Market and was head of produce there. So you've been in this business a long time. You're in charge, essentially, of figuring out where you're going to get the stuff to sell your customers. You got to make sure you're in stock, so when the customer comes in or online that you have it. How are you thinking about the role that indoor ag will play in you meeting your responsibilities to serve your customers?
Well, I like, again, I'll refer to the previous seminar. Paul Mastronardi referred to robots, right? And everybody knows right now what's one of our biggest challenges, whether it's at the retail store, whether it's our growers, it's labor, right? So will that industry offer me more of an opportunity to be able to get my orders filled, right? Because they're looking at that technology, and because they're in that enclosed space, have more of an ability to take advantage of it, right? So I think that's a great opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Are you worried about your supply chain, thinking out 3 years? Are you worried about getting enough stuff?
It's a challenge, right? I mean, we're constantly looking for new options, and once again, this conversation and controlled environment agriculture and potentially the locality of it, when you're talking about certain categories, I guess you would say the leafy green category, the herbs, being able to find somebody that's closer to you, something that's not going to be on a truck for as long, something that's going to reduce the carbon footprint, all things that the consumer likes to hear, or certain consumers like to hear, but also things that are going to impact my cost and my ability to get product faster and more consistently.
Yeah, and you service a lot of stores. But if you were to predict over the next 3 years that the categories that indoor will penetrate, which categories would you predict besides greens, herbs, and berries?
Now you're asking me to be a prognosticator, huh?
I am.
Wow.
That's right.
Yeah, I don't know past that. I will say I think the berry category, because we've only seen the very beginnings of that right now. We haven't seen what that's going to be at all, and I think that's going to be huge.
Okay.
'Cause those berries, no matter I've tasted quite a few, and there's a lot of different technologies and companies that are using different seeds and everything else. But that gives us such an opportunity. I've seen where I've had a premium berry from an outdoor grower in some of my stores in the past, where people would pay ridiculous retails, for a berry that they could buy for a quarter of the price that was grown in the field. Just because of what it delivered from a taste profile perspective. Mm-hmm. So I really feel like that's the big category for the immediate future.
Right. So in your use, you have a lot of pitches from people coming trying to sell you stuff because they want you to sell their stuff. What's the best pitch you got from a farmer or producer, picker, shipper? And what's the worst one you got?
Well, you just reminded me of what maybe the future is, right? So I've had some people talking to me about being able to supply us with what would be potentially, row crops, commodity vegetables that would be grown indoors. And, when you think about something that has inherently recently been impacted with some, foodborne illness problems, challenges, that being able to source, or at least being able to source a percentage of your volume that way gives you an opportunity to be in stock when we have these advisories or these recalls.
So that's a compelling argument for you.
Yeah.
Okay, what about one that was not so good?
People know better than to come to me with stuff that's not a good argument. Yeah. They know I like to argue.
I just did, you mean? Yeah, okay. All right, we'll let you off the hook for now. Caitlin, you got an interesting background for sure. What do you think about CEA and its potential? What is it for you? And
I'm Caitlin Tierney. I just moved to Sprouts Farmers Market, so bear with me. Is going to be talking from Caitlin's perspective versus Sprouts' perspective. But CEA is extremely important in our agriculture. I think that.
Hold your mic up a little bit.
Sorry. I think that in general, it is going to be growing. I think it's going to be probably 25 to 40% in 10 years, in my personal perspective. There's some things that will never be in my idea in the next 100 years. They can't be onion farms that are grown indoor with organic seed in an organic atmosphere. So I think that we're going to continue to need to grow and innovate and solve for solutions. But I think it's a very important perspective, especially when it comes to local and food safety. So I was lucky enough just coming from Mass and Hardy Produce, and we worked with food service, obviously, as well. And there's some amazing companies out there that you would not expect that pay a complete premium for a hydroponically grown tomato because they don't have to worry about an animal going into the woods and there's being something that contaminates the product. They have food safety concerns, and they're addressing it through CEA. So I think it's a growing category.
Right, so you're going to be the head of innovation over at Sprouts, working with our good friend Jack.
Yes.
And what are you going to tell him about CEA?
Well, I think it's for all our retailers, it's something that we're going to have to find a way to communicate to the consumer. You said people have said consumers don't care. I disagree. I think it's our job as retailers and marketers and farmers to make them care, because they should care how their food is grown, where it's grown, and above all, how it tastes. I think that it's our job as retailers, as farmers, as marketers, to increase consumption. That's when I go to work every single day, is try to increase consumption. And how do you do that? It's by educating them, number one, giving them the best flavor experience, giving them convenience, and giving them freshness. Because freshness, like in our last meeting, how is it healthier? How is CA healthier? Well, we're dealing with living organisms, right? And just like humans, we digress. And for instance, romaine. You go to a romaine crop in Salinas right around the corner. You've never tasted romaine. So amazing when it comes from the field. It's more nutritious. It's more flavorful. It's still so fresh. And then you take it and you transport it on a truck to a DC. It stays there for 3 days. Then you transport it across the nation to Michigan. It loses its flavor. It loses its shelf life. And so if you can sort of take those miles off of it and grow it in your backyard, whether it's 100 miles away or 10 miles away, and give that fresher, better flavor tasting, you're going to increase consumption naturally.
So it sounds like you kind of disagree with Fran, that you would actually argue that a retailer could argue, this is indoor grown, here's the advantages, we're putting it alongside the outdoor and grown, and we think you should know this, and that might be a reason for the customer to buy it.
Absolutely, no offense. Absolutely. I also disagree with the last panel that says that we should have some type of organically grown nation worldwide. I think that's impossible. You noted that in Europe they grow part of being organic is that it has to be used organic seed. In the US, it's organically grown. Organically grown does not mean that you need to use USDA certified organic seed. So if you really think about that, it's nature versus nurture. You're taking something that has pesticides and you're putting it in a organic nature, and you're then pulling it out and saying, it's organic. So I would say, if you wanted to bring that into the US, it's impossible. Definitely in seeds that are dormant, like onions, that only produce seed crops once a year. Well, if that once a year you get some disease and it wipes it out, onions worldwide, in India, they consume close to 50% of the onion consumption. They don't have onions anymore because we're just saying it has to be organic seed. So I think there's still some more learning and road work that we have to do.
So it's really interesting that you the different points of view in there, because I can tell you, look, if you go to your grocer and you look at the set right now, we had another slide that Fran and I had worked on but you can see there's a whole raft of labels out there. And I can tell you that as someone who's served the customer for many years as a grocer, that they get confused. They start to glaze over because there's claims about water, there's claims about pesticides, there's claims about this, and it's very confusing. And they say, what do I eat? That's the old Seinfeld joke. What do you eat? You look pretty good. I'll eat what you eat, right? Because it's very hard for them to figure out what claims are true. The power of the organic standard, which was put on over many years, is at least there's a seal that says there's a minimum quality. Now, over the last 4 years, no work has been done to evolve those standards. They certainly were not written with CEA in mind, because it didn't really exist in much scale at that time. We're probably still now even less than 1% of food supply from CEA. However, we heard the last panel say anywhere from 5 to 25%. So it's going to be a real factor in the supply of fresh fruits and vegetables, and organic fresh fruits and vegetables in the United States. So what about that confusion, Fran? I mean, you would agree that this variety of labels out there that's all making sorts of different claims. What
Sure.
matters?
Yeah,
What would you say about that confusion?
I would clarify that it's not that CEA doesn't matter. It's a complex idea to communicate to consumers. I think we shouldn't treat consumers as one blanket peanut butter. I think the power of marketing is understanding your consumer segments and giving them the right message at the right time in the right place.
Give us an example. Millennial mom.
For example, I mean, supermarket customers are our number one priority. That is where the decision is actually made. So for us, our packaging is the most critical purchase driver in what we say on our packaging, and then being able to communicate, a decision pattern right there with stanchion sign packaging. But there are other vehicles, I would say, how we talk to the press. We have a lot of folks here, who are from the media, and the ability to tell a complex story through a press and what CEA is appropriate, and you have time and ability to do it. Social media as a snapshot. So I would say it's not a peanut butter approach, and there's a great study for anybody who wants to purchase it. It's from Hartman, and they talk about consumers like a target. It's a thing, and then you have to think about the bullseye, and then think about who are your inner group of who's going to be the drivers of the future. So that's your inner circle of the Gen Zs, and they're making decisions based on sustainability, not giving up flavor, but really in tune to wanting to know how their food grows. And then think about it as you go outside of the target of, just mom, who's, literally, I would say, especially in the pandemic, for us, not only is it the up and coming generation that's making an impact, I would say the pandemic has dramatically changed of the way that we're pivoting, talking to consumers, what their priorities are. And even just at dinner last night, we were talking about, someone's wife is like a teacher, and it's at the school that they're doing at home, and she's teaching, and the kids are trying to go to school, and they were literally like, I have 3 minutes on Instacart to actually just, punch my decision. And so you really just have to think of the mindset of the path to purchase where they're making decisions, and then in that, it's really almost, it's a very precise, deliberate, effective messaging for the right time, for the right people, so.
Okay, Vic, over to you. You're the grocer putting it on a shelf. What is your thought about this in terms of all these different labels, the claims, what matters? What have you seen?
I think some consistency in what you're seeing up there is obviously necessary, and there's certainly some that are more important than others. Obviously, the organic is the one that stands out more than anything, and I think is the most impactful. An organic customer is not going to buy conventional product. A conventional customer will buy organic. So there's a value to it. It's not a value to everybody, but it's going to help in expanding your consumer penetration. So I think there's a lot of value in that. But I don't think that that's the most important thing with every one of the categories, like I said previously, that are part of this controlled environment agriculture. I don't think that the berry category being organic is that imperative. I think it helps, but I don't think that is what's going to make it be successful. What's going to make that berry category be successful is flavor.
Okay.
Right? I think when you talk about leafy greens, and because of how many organic salads that we sell in the stores, that it being organic is hugely important.
Right.
Right? So again, it's going to vary by category. There's some categories that I think it's totally required that it be organic, and that it be shown very clearly that it's organic.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It is by categories. So the penetration in organic and in greens is well north of 10%. So it leads the revolution, if you will. But if you come into berries, you're still in single digits. But obviously, if this is going to fulfill its promise beyond the 1%, it's going to have to move into multiple categories as part of the supply chain as it emerges over the next 5 years. But have you had any experiences in stores with actual customers where you watch them pick up the box, try to, what does this mean, Vic? No pesticides, low water. Have you had any experiences where you could share?
No, I have to be honest with you. I usually don't get questions like that. Usually more of the questions are around, how's this taste? Rather than, is this organic or how's this grown? I think you were totally on point that I really don't think the consumer has a clue where the stuff is coming from. And I don't think we do a great job telling them either. And that's probably the reason why.
Okay, Caitlin, what do you think about that?
About what? Which question?
Well, he just said he doesn't think the customer cares about where it comes from.
I would.
Oh, they don't know where it comes from.
I think they know. So talking about local, what is local, right? And
No one knows.
no one knows. And if you asked Vic, his answer would be different than mine, and your answer would. And it's very personal. That's what local is, and it's how you attach that personal effect to the customer. So making them care about the grower. Care about that you're helping. We all want to help people at the end of the day. Definitely XYZs and whatever the next letter of the alphabet it's going to be. And so I think it's how you communicate to caring where your product comes from, caring who you're helping, caring about the environment. If you can connect that heart of the consumer to your product, to your experience in the store, you're going to grow sales, you're going to grow consumption, and you're going to also grow education, because then they're going to look at, whose is Susie's farm? Like, how many children does she have? Where is she located? Does she have a farmer's market that I can go drive 45 miles to and grab some product from? So it's really about experience, and local is local. I laughed when I moved out to California like 9 years ago, originally from Michigan. And local season's about 3 months in Michigan, and it matters. Everyone gets excited about local blueberries, local onions. They care about local celery, and it's not the best in Michigan. No offense, but that being said, I go to California, and they're like, "We've got local carrots." I'm like, are you local carrots? California serves 90% of carrots for the U.S. That's not what local means to me. Local means it's the caring part, and that's the journey that you have to get to with the customer.
So let me just, again, from the growers we heard earlier, that we heard about their innovations with the use of energy, the use of water, with the lack of pesticides, with the surety around food safety, around their ability to crop cycle faster, to be able to get you product. Do those benefits matter from your perspective?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that I fight with why is not CA organic. They do pest management extremely well. It's in a controlled atmosphere. That's why they're able to have more consistency in flavor, supply, and quality. And so I struggle working on an organic TOV versus a TOV. There's not much difference between the two. And really, at the end of the day, if I can get a better tasting tomato closer 50 miles away in my backyard, and it is in controlled atmosphere with pest management and all the right solutions, that they're not trying to spray anything on this product. They don't want to. They don't want to spend extra costs, so they're going to grow it at the best possible way. Isn't that organic? I mean, for me, I struggle with some of the things. Going back to the stamp of how everything's grown, I think CEA needs a stamp. It needs to be, this is a controlled environment, and how we explain that, I don't think it's just a stamp of CEA, to be honest with you. That doesn't sound warm and fuzzy to a consumer, but how we explain that to the consumer, explain that it's grown the best way possible, and it's got the best flavor experience, and it hasn't had a green footprint. It's just the best thing. And explain that, put a stamp on it, and let's see how it goes. But that's a marketer's job, and I really do think it's how do we tell the story without confusing.
Right. So I think Fran made a great point. We're at this unique time where we have kind of 4 generations of customers out there. That's not one customer, to your point. And even within that, there's the segments. But we have the boomers like myself. We have the Xers, we have the millennials, we have the Gen Z. The Gen Z has made it very clear that the packaging really matters to them. You better figure that out, or you're not gonna have that customer. The millennial really cares about how you're growing it, and so the boomer cares, I think, probably more would skew on the flavor side, and then there's those who care about accessibility. I can't afford it, right? So we have 20, 25 million people food insecure in the United States that just don't have the resources to be able to buy an expensive box of greens. So, Fran, you've talked a lot about flavor, but I want to ask you about some of these other things. I think that nutrition is going to come more to the fore in terms of what is the actual nutrient quality of the product. Accessibility is important societally to this idea of dealing with healthcare costs. The health or freshness of the product. Diversity of flavor. We're feeding ourselves, 80% of it's from 12 plants and 5 animals. We've pretty much all fallen down at the altar of productivity as opposed to any sort of variety. So how do you see those things, nutrition, accessibility, diversity, to complement what you're talking about with flavor? And CEA's potential to deliver on those?
Yes, you're going off script on tough questions now. No, really good questions. I think if you look, at least in the fruit category, where the dramatic sales have happened over the last 10 years. There's a great chart. You can probably go find it from Nielsen or IRI, and over a 10-year time period where the berry category has been. And then over the last year, you could see the hockey stick of which products have really, during the pandemic, have taken an uptick. And I think some of them are tomatoes, avocados, and citrus. And I'm not as familiar with some of those other categories, but my assumption sometimes under citrus is during the pandemic, there was really great consciousness of the combination of flavor in my house, but a broader sense of how do I stay healthy. So nutrition overall, I think, consumers are very fickle. So at the same time, they're having a nutrition, I got to take care of myself, and they're deep diving, I think, into our categories and buying produce. On the other side, center of store has seen an uptick where they're also, splurging on the cakes and the sourdough. So, if we actually knew what was inside the head of the consumer, my job would be a lot easier. And so you're almost like a data scientist of like, what is the behavior behind what it is they're trying to do? And then how do you make it easy to connect to that unmet need? The other big trend that we saw during the pandemic for us was really this concept of premiumization. And so we've been in a fortunate place. We've just launched, it's been 2 years now. In 2019, we launched a Sweetest Batch, which is a berry patch high premium. We've launched rosé berries. And that was something where it was a combination of health. I am doing this because berries are good for me, especially from a strawberry side. We saw the uptick. But the concept of they were willing to pay more because it was a sweeter treat for them. For us, that was like the perfect storm of like, the center of store chocolate cake that they're baking and then the health conscious. So we have to figure out how to blend and identify that need, and then how do we talk to them in a way that what their concerns are.
So this wasn't in the script, but again, if you agree with me in the 4 generations of customers,
Yep.
How would you think each of those 4 generations would think about the CEA proposition?
Well, we've been thinking about Gen Z for quite a while right now, and I think the topics underneath it are really been critical to us from a sustainability perspective. And so for Driscoll's, our pillars are labor. So really, I think we all agree labor being the number one challenge for us. So global labor standards for us, we have a fair trade program. Our second pillar is water, and I think certainly between fires, climate change, I mean, there has been so many dramatic changes in the weather that impact us, which I think is one of the benefits of CEA is the ability, like Mother Nature is not controllable with us. We may have incredible, berries and tasting berries, but growing it is a problem. So apologies for all the customers out there every time we prorate you. We do try to do our best. And so water as a conservation. So we're part of the WWF and series in our commitment of water stewardship. The third pillar for us is actually packaging. So I think we're the first U.S. company that has committed to the Ellen MacArthur Foundation in a circular economy. So our commitment to really reduce the amount of plastic that we use, and then a component of it, some of you may have seen in the marketplace as we're trialing things like corrugated packaging. And then we're global, so the great thing for us is, we have partners all over the world that are trialing things and we stay nimble. And so packaging, you can go look at our European packaging where they're all in paper base now, and so even the core line is moving toward it. When we also think about CEA, I mean, greenhouse for us, while it's small for us in Europe, they have been doing it. Greenhouse has been around for a long time. And then our commitment, I think, for CEA is when you think about on a global level, I mean, we have operations in China, our ability to actually bring berries anywhere in the world where there isn't, I think our founder and CEO, Miles, talks about he has traveled every piece of land in this world to find the perfect growing conditions for berries because they are so picky. So the ability, I think, to remove that that component of it, that if you want to go to a population that has never eaten berries, and you know that there would be a good proposition there, you're moving it closer to your consumer base. That's one of the huge advantages. So
that's a great answer in terms of the sustainability and the future of all that. But think about the other generations of customers. Do you think they probably think less about packaging? They do think about sustainability. But a boomer, for example, or a millennial, how do you think about their interest, or what's important to them? Why would CEA matter to them versus the Gen Z?
I think we talked a little bit about local and freshness, and our research indicates the umbrella of the hierarchy is, so if it's flavor first, then the second one being this concept of freshness. So if freshness is the big umbrella, underneath freshness, local is the most believable way that you can deliver on the promise of freshness, which is critical to what we call delight. Delight for us is flavor, but it also includes a couple of complex ideas in there. So I think CEA has the ability to deliver freshness, but through the local lens. Freshness also can be delivered, through us of how fast we get berries, to market. Flavor doesn't necessarily deteriorate with the transportation. It's the quality that matters. And so I would say probably the most perishable or delicate berry for us is raspberries. So our ability to get raspberries to market and to our customers in the fastest way so that the quality doesn't deteriorate, because that's a perception of the flavor doesn't deteriorate. It's the experience of I've got a moldy raspberry, which is really
as a grocer, it's also an experience when you pick it up, and we call it shatter, but you get the thing, and there's a couple of bad berries in there, and it's kind of a bummer when you get home with a box of raspberries with shatter in it. But okay, well, Vic, let me have you add to Fran's comments again. Can you take that mic there? When you think about your future, we're going back around the future supply chain. You're serving multiple customers, multiple generations. Obviously, they come from different places. What do you think matters the most to them of all things Fran was talking about? And how does it vary by their age or by where they live or which part of the country they're in?
Fran would obviously know better from a data perspective, when we're going across the different generations. But I could say, in my opinion, I said earlier about flavor, but as she stated, I agree with the freshness aspect too, and that's from everybody in a little bit of a different way. For me personally, as a retailer, freshness, longer shelf life, less shrink. And then the delight aspect, because it's going to just eat better and get that consumer to come back. I think those are all things that not just I as a retailer, but my consumers are going to feel are a priority and important to them, and it's going to get them to come back again.
So what percentage do you think of your supply chain CEA will be 3 years from now, 5 years from now?
I would agree. I think I heard someone say earlier that they really believe it's going to be somewhere around 10%. I think they said 10 years from now. I could see that happening sooner.
And are you actively out there looking for CEA partners?
I am, yeah, especially in certain categories.
So what can you say that's not top secret that you can share with this group?
What
does that look like, you going out? You go out and...
The one thing I could say is, in my experience as of late, because I have been visiting quite a few people in a certain category, is how differently everyone is doing it. Like, everyone has their own little nuance, their own little way that they're growing things, that they're planting, what it's growing in, soil, hydro. It's hard to determine from my side, with my so far experience, what's the right way. I think we'll find out soon. I think once you enter into any kind of partnership with somebody, I've found a couple of people that I've done it partnerships with that do it in certain ways are not very successful. I won't share that though.
That's okay. But so you're doing these partnerships because you want to make sure you have stuff, right, to sell? Or are you doing it because you want to bring that variety to the customer? Are you doing it because you think it's more responsible? Why are you doing it?
All of the above. Yeah. As a human being, you want just on this earth, I want to do the right thing. Mm-hmm. I want to make the right decisions for my kids' kids, right? I think we all do. As a business person, I want to be the most competitive in that category and those segments, and have what my competitors don't have. Or at least be in front of them, right? So I want to have that distinct competitive advantage by having the right partner in those in the controlled atmosphere agriculture arena.
So it's interesting. You say you go out there and everyone is telling you that they're telling you how they do it a little bit differently than the others. That's the one thing. Is there anything else that you could say from those conversations when you've been out there?
It's we're used to doing business with farmers, and it's introduced an element of technology that I never thought my career would be faced with, right? But it's very exciting. I mean, it is the exciting part of our industry right now, let's face it. And there's very little hope that we're going to find the next kiwi or the new item that's going to be a huge volume commodity item that is just going to increase our sales and just deliver that those dollars that we're looking for. But items that we're already carrying, items that we're already familiar with, that we can upgrade, that we can sell the best available taste, flavor, freshness. That's our opportunity for growth, I think.
That's great. Caitlin, you want to add anything to that discussion?
I do think that there's still categories to find. I think if you would have taken Brussels sprouts 15 years ago, they've been around forever, but not in the States as the way they were now, or are now. Same with cauliflower. I would have never thought 15 years ago I'd be eating cauliflower steak at a fine dining restaurant. So I think there's ways we can still scope produce, change produce, elevate produce. I think that's sort of my job at Sprouts as a Senior Director of Innovation. I do think that around the world, as we become more ethnic, more diverse, more flavors and different profiles are going to adapt into our culture. So going to India or even Europe's always been about 7 to 10 years ahead of us.
That's right.
Especially when it comes to produce, whether it be food safety, organics, different products, different knowledges, different handling processes, packaging. To packaging point, I just discovered this actually this week, was America does not have a standard for recycle. So you can put recycle, that symbol, on anything. California is actually fighting right now to make sure that there's a standardization when it comes to recyclability. And so I think that we continue as Americans to grow, adapt, diversify, and accelerate. And the faster we can do that, I think it's the better thing for our environment, our families, retailers, growers alike.
That's great. I was going to say on the standards thing, I think it's pretty clear that these standards are going to change over the next 3 to 5 years as more is known, more technology is introduced. Is a container the same as a farm? Is soil necessary? Any of these questions are going to have to get resolved in terms of an organic standard for CEA. It is going to happen. Exactly how it's going to happen, I'm not sure, but I think my own lesson from putting the organic standard in place for the overall industry was once we did that, once there was clarity in the customer's mind that there was a seal that is stood for something, it just allowed the industry to boom. And I do think these questions that are out there on the different ways in which things are being done, whether it's resource use or the different questions that we've talked about this morning, they're going to have to get resolved. So we're running out of time. Final question to each of you, please. The topic of the session is indoor ag reality or hype. Sounds like maybe the answer is somewhere between. But would each of you please give a final thought to the future? Is it reality? Is it hype? And what will be the one prediction that you'd make for in terms of the unfolding of CEA and organics in the next 3 to 5 years? Go ahead, Caitlin.
I do think it's reality. I think as atmospheres continue to change, as climate changes, the more we can control our environment, the better. The better we can give an experience of flavor, consistency. We can give that to a customer every day. That's what our customer wants. So I think it is reality. Do I think it's outdoor ag is going to change? Yes, I think it's going to be mechanical harvesting way more. I think there's going to be evolution when it comes to outdoor farming as well. Do I think outdoor farming is going away? Absolutely not. I think indoor farming is an accent to agriculture. It's a cherry on the cake, but the cake's still there. And so I think it's going to continue to evolve, and I'm excited for my next, I'd say 20 years in this industry. I'm hoping only 20, to see what comes of it, to be honest with you.
I probably should have looked up the true definition of hype because as a marketer, I love hype. I think I don't think anyone in this industry is trying to mislead anyone. And I think what I'm seeing in the marketplace is the excitement of how do we get people to eat fresh fruit and vegetables. So for me, I would say let's embrace disruption. We have so much more work to do. I think when I look sometimes at the numbers of how many people are eating what they're supposed to be eating on their daily recommended allowance of fruits and vegetables, I think I'm super excited. I love disruption. Driscoll's for me has always been pioneer and leading edge, and I think we need to figure out how to all band together and make the word hype good and have people eat more fruits and vegetables. So. My one prediction is that I think we should take on the plant-based meat and have them move over, and that we need to definitely embrace CEA and figure out how to just really continue growing our industry. We got to figure out how to grow our industry.
Definitely reality, no question about it. And it introduces an element of excitement in our industry that we haven't had for a while, and I love it, and I think we all should. And I think we're going to figure out this organic thing too. I think we have to eliminate the necessity for soil to be part of that equation, and when we do, it's going to give us an opportunity to build this even more.
And your biggest prediction in terms of the customer confusion in the future?
I think we have to find a way of conveying that message, telling that story, just like we have about local, just like we have about a lot of different initiatives or things of importance to our customer. There's another one of those things that we have to find a way to deliver the message of what it means to them.
Okay, so I would say, and the group comes down decidedly on the side of it's going to happen and it's coming. Let's get excited about it. It's the future. So thank you all. Please join me in thanking our panelists for being here today.